Claire sat on the couch beside Mark, their legs barely touching, Olympic highlights flickering across the TV. The announcer's voice faded behind her thoughts. Another evening of silence stretched between them. She glanced at her husband. Same t-shirt he'd worn for 3 days, beer in hand, nodding off after a long day of work. Routine. Predictable. Emotionless. Then came the dive. The screen cut to a slow-motion replay. Theo Laurent, the French diver, midair. The camera lingered just a second too long on his descent, his skimpy trunks barely clinging to him.
Claire blinked.
She wasn't alone. Twitter exploded seconds later. Mark scoffed. They're calling him the thigh god of Paris. Ridiculous. He chuckled to himself and took a sip of his beer. Claire, though, couldn't look away. The dive was flawless, but it was more than that. It wasn't just his body, though that was impossible to ignore. It was the way he carried himself. Confidence radiated from him. Grace, focus, calm under pressure. Everything her life lacked lately. Mark flipped the channel. Claire picked up her phone, opened Instagram. Theo Laurent official. Blue check. Thousands of comments. She scrolled. Practice clips, candid shots, behind-the-scenes footage from the Olympic Village. One photo made her pause. Him standing shirtless on a balcony overlooking the Seine. Sunset behind him. The caption. Breathe. Focus. Dive again. She followed him. At first, it was harmless. Or so she told herself. She watched his stories during lunch breaks, checked his feed before bed. It was a curious sort of fascination, not just sexual. He was young, maybe 10 years her junior, but he had a fire she couldn't look away from. A pulse. An energy. Claire began noticing things. The way her husband left his dirty socks in the hallway. The way he'd answer her with, instead of words. How they hadn't kissed properly in months. How her skin missed touch. One afternoon, she clicked open the DM box. Typed 3 words. That dive though. Then deleted them. Typed again. Gold medal in my heart.
Cringe.
Deleted. Settled on a waving emoji.
Sent it.
Heart pounding. She told herself he'd never respond. He had hundreds of thousands of followers. What were the chances? An hour later, her phone buzzed. Appreciate it, smiley face. Glad you enjoyed the show. Paris sends a smile. Claire stared at the message, her heart racing. She looked at Mark, asleep again on the couch, mouth slightly open, TV droning in the background. She looked back at her phone. Paris sends a smile. She smiled too. Not out of lust. Out of the strange warmth that someone somewhere had noticed her. Not as a wife. Not as someone's mother. Just her. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Mark snored beside her. Her phone lit up. Another message. You in Paris too? Her fingers hovered. Then typed. Not yet.
She hit send.
Claire's days began to shift. Morning coffee wasn't just caffeine anymore. It was checking her phone for a new message from Theo. He replied often. Sometimes playful, sometimes thoughtful. There was an ease in his words, like he wasn't trying too hard but still noticed the little things she said. He asked questions, followed up, remembered details. It wasn't anything inappropriate. Not yet. But every message left a lingering pull. She hadn't told him about Mark. She told herself it was easier that way.
Cleaner.
Less complicated. Besides, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Just messaging. Just talking. No harm in that. But the truth clung to her in quiet moments. When Mark leaned in for a kiss, and she turned slightly so it landed on her cheek. When he asked how her day was, and she answered with a half-lie, skipping over the part where she'd spent an hour rewatching Theo's interviews. The messages became longer. More personal. Theo shared how the sudden fame was overwhelming. How people saw his body, not his mind. Claire told him about her job, her writing dreams shelved long ago, her love for the sea. He said, "You should be writing. You've got depth." Just 5 words, but they pierced deeper than anything Mark had said in years. She bought a new lipstick. Started wearing earrings again. Not for Mark. Not even for Theo, really. for the version of herself that had started to wake up again. One evening, Theo sent a voice message. His accent, low and warm, spilled through her earbuds like velvet. "You have a beautiful way of seeing the world," he said. "Wish I could hear more of it in person." Her breath caught. That line stayed with her long after the message ended. She looked at Mark, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone with a half-eaten sandwich beside him. They used to travel,
Laugh.
talk for hours. But now, even silence between them felt loud. That night, Claire wrote Theo, "I might come to Paris.
Just for weekend.
To clear my head." He replied instantly, "I'd like that. No pressure, but I'd like that." She didn't tell Mark. Said she needed a short break, time for herself, maybe visit a college friend. He barely looked up.
Sure.
Take what you need. The flight wasn't expensive. She didn't overthink it. She packed lightly. One bag, passport, a notebook she hadn't opened in years. On the plane, she stared at her reflection in the window. This wasn't just about Theo. It was about everything she had stopped feeling, everything she had buried. The woman who used to take risks, dream big, flirt with life. She missed her. Claire didn't rehearse what she'd say to Theo. Didn't try to define what it was between them. She just knew one thing. When he looked at her, even through a screen, she felt seen. And it had been a long, long time since anyone looked at her that way. Paris felt different this time. Not the city, but her. Claire moved through the streets with a quiet urgency, her mind racing even as her footsteps stayed calm. She didn't message Theo until she was already checked into the small hotel, the kind with no lobby music, just the smell of old wood and dusted books. "I'm here," she wrote. His reply was instant. "Meet me tomorrow. 11, Palais Royal Gardens." She didn't sleep much. Her heart wouldn't slow. She tried reading, watching the ceiling, counting breaths. Nothing worked. The anticipation was louder than guilt. She had no plans beyond the meeting. No script. No excuses.
He was already there when she arrived.
Dressed casually, sunglasses tucked into his shirt collar. In real life, he looked even younger. But something about the way he carried himself made it easy to forget. He smiled when he saw her. She expected awkwardness. There wasn't any. They walked,
Talked.
laughed about the Olympic memes. He teased her accent. She complimented his patience with fame. Hours passed. She didn't check her phone once. It was like slipping into another world, one that moved slower, where each glance held weight and every pause hummed with something unspoken. Over coffee, he reached across the table, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was brief, but electric. She didn't stop him. Didn't look away. When they kissed, it wasn't rushed or messy. It felt inevitable. What followed needed no explanation between them. No words. Later, wrapped in white sheets and a silence that didn't feel empty, Claire stared at the cracked ceiling. Theo lay beside her, arm resting behind his head, eyes closed. For a moment, she tried to convince herself this was freedom, that this was what she'd needed. But the weight didn't lift. He opened his eyes, met hers, and smiled gently. "You're not staying, are you?" She didn't answer. On the flight back, her stomach twisted with every passing cloud. It wasn't regret, not exactly. It was knowing that whatever she had felt in that hotel room didn't fix anything. Didn't fill the absence she carried daily. Mark picked her up from the airport. No flowers. No questions. Just the usual. "Good trip?" She nodded. He drove in silence, occasionally checking the GPS. At home, everything was where she left it. Her toothbrush, her slippers, her empty skin. That night, lying in bed beside him, Claire stared at the ceiling again. Same ceiling. Different ache. She thought of Theo, of his hands, his quiet strength, but mostly of how fleeting it all was. A perfect moment already dissolving into memory. Her phone buzzed once. A message from him. "Hope you're okay." She turned the screen over, closed her eyes, and for the first time cried, not because she missed Theo, but because she couldn't remember the last time she felt whole without needing someone else to complete her. Mark knew. Maybe not the full story, but enough. Claire could see it in the way he watched her from across the kitchen that morning, eyes hesitant, searching. The tension hung between them like humidity. Heavy. Quiet. She poured coffee, avoiding his gaze, heart thudding as if she were still lying.
He spoke first.
You've been somewhere else lately. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. Not just on a trip. Claire didn't deny it. She didn't have the strength to construct another excuse. I needed space, she said. I haven't been okay for a long time. Mark nodded slowly. And you didn't think to tell me? I didn't think you'd care. The words slipped out before she could stop them. They landed hard. He flinched. He sat down, rubbing his temples. Maybe I haven't been the best partner, but I thought we were still trying. His voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time in years, Claire saw real pain on his face. She didn't tell him about Theo. Not directly. Not yet. Just enough to be honest without destroying everything. There was someone. Not love. Just something that made me feel alive again. It's over. It was barely anything, but it made me realize how numb I've become. Mark didn't speak for a long time. Then, do you want to fix this? The question stunned her. She didn't know the answer. I don't want to lie anymore. We can try counseling, he said quietly.
Or whatever it takes.
If you still want this. Claire nodded, but not out of certainty. Out of obligation. Out of the thought that maybe healing was still possible, even if love looked different now. That night, she deleted Theo's messages. Blocked the account. Not because she hated him. Not out of anger. But because she had to choose a direction, and this, whatever this was, couldn't exist in the middle. He messaged one last time before she blocked him. You don't owe me anything. Just know I liked who you were with me. The words lingered. She kept writing, though. In secret notebooks, at first. Scribbled pieces of thoughts, confessions she couldn't say aloud. Not for publication. Not for an audience. Just for herself. Her pen became the one honest space she had left. Mark tried. Small gestures. Cooking dinner. Sitting beside her without distraction. But trust wasn't a faucet. It didn't return with a twist. It seeped in slowly, if at all. She never looked at the Olympic highlights again. The dive that started it all became a faint whisper in memory, like a dream that once burned bright and now just flickered at the edges. Some days, she missed Theo. But more than that, she missed who she almost became with him. Not the woman who cheated. The woman who dared to feel again. And as she sat by the window months later, pen in hand, watching the rain trace lines across the glass, she realized something. Sometimes the affair isn't with a person. It's with possibility. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to let go of.